ask everyone to please be seated at this time. We're about to begin the services for Myron, brother Silverman. We want to welcome everyone here at the chapel as well as everyone that's viewing online. Just a gentle reminder for those of you that are present in the chapel, if you have a cell phone with you, please place it in the silent mode or turn it off completely. That would be appreciated. The services this afternoon will be officiated by Rabbi David Chapman from Congregation Beth Shalom in Northbrook. Thank you.
Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai mi yagor be'olecha, mi yishkon behar kodshecha, holech tamim ufoel tzedek, udover emet bilvavo. A Psalm of David. Do we deserve to enter God's sanctuary? Can we merit a place in the presence of God? Here's how. Live with integrity. Do what is right. Speak the truth without deceit. Have no slander upon your tongue. Do no evil to others. Do not mistreat your neighbor. Spurn a contemptible person, but honor those who revere Adonai. Never retract a promise once made, though it may bring you harm. Lend no money at unfair rates. Accept no bribe against the innocent. Make these deeds your own, and you will stand firm forever. These words, after Psalm 15, were written many thousands of years ago, but they could have applied to Myron or Brother or Mr. Chicago or Mr. Rush Street or Mike or Mr. Gold Coast or however you knew him. Those words could have been written for him. We've come today to mourn his loss, but also to celebrate the good life that he lived. Myron, as we will hear today, and as many of you know, was larger than life. He loved nothing more than gathering together with his good friends, sharing stories, telling jokes, watching people go by, and celebrating everything that life has to offer. And that is exactly what we are going to do here today in his honor and in his memory. Also in Psalms, we read the words, Karov Adonai lenishbere lev. God draws close to those that are brokenhearted. Whether you connect to the idea of God or not, this verse expresses the idea that when something has been torn from our life, we yearn to connect to something larger than ourselves to find that comfort. It could be God, it could be community, it could be our memories, it could be one another. And many of you here today are among the brokenhearted. In particular, our hearts go out to brother's sister, Merle, along with Stan, and his nephews, Sandy, Howard, and Stephen, along with Tracy and Sherry. We also remember those who left this world before brother, whom he loved, his sister, Renee, along with Irvin, and his dear parents, Betty and Samuel, of blessed memory. We also know that the group of brokenhearted, in brother's case, includes countless friends, admirers, colleagues, customers, ex-girlfriends, truly countless people into whose life he brought joy, fellowship, and laughter. There's a rabbinic story, there's a Jewish story about two ships, and I think that brother, who we learned was an occasional fisherman, might appreciate the story about these boats. One was coming into port, and one was leaving on its destination. And everybody who was gathered at the port was cheering the ship that was going out to sea, and they were ignoring the ship that was coming back in. It was barely noticed. And a wise person was watching this take place, and he said, we're rejoicing over the wrong ship. We're rejoicing over the ship that is setting out to sea, but we don't know what's going to happen to that ship, what destiny awaits it. Rather, we should rejoice over the ship that is coming back to its port safely and has brought all of its passengers with it in peace. And that's how we are sometimes in life. We rejoice, for instance, when a baby is born, and as we should, that is something to rejoice. But when a person dies, we're sad. Whereas really it's the other way around. When a baby is born, we don't know what fate might await it. But when a person has lived a good life and dies after that good life, that is a time that we should rejoice, because that person has completed their journey successfully and is departing this world with the crown of a good name. Only when a life is completed, when our beloved family member or friend returns to port, can we truly take the measure of that person and be able to acknowledge that they were a good soul, they were someone who made a difference, who tried their best to be a good neighbor, a good friend, a good brother, a good uncle, and a good person. And that is what Brother was truly all about. We'll now hear some words from some of those here who knew Brother best. First, his sister Merle, and then his nephew Sandy.
Ooh, where is the speech? Okay. Yeah, that's Sandy. That's Sandy. Okay. I know where it was. Hi. Thank you all for being here today to celebrate a wonderful life. You may have known him as Myron, Mike, or Uncle Brother, but the ones closest to him lovingly called him Brother. There were 3 siblings in our family. Renee was the eldest, followed by Myron 4.5 years later, and I arrived 4.5 years after him. Growing up, our age differences led us down our own paths until adulthood reunited us. As grown-ups, we forged a strong bond characterized by shared laughter and a deep appreciation for the treasure that is family. Uncle Brother shared a special bond with his nephews, Howard, Stevie, and Sandy. Their closeness is something Renee and I will treasure forever and be grateful for. Brother had a legendary status as a son, a sibling, an uncle, brother-in-law, friend, business partner, and boyfriend. He never had a bad thing to say about anybody, and no one had a bad word to say about him. When I married Stan, my brother playfully exclaimed, "Well, we've hit the jackpot." For me, I got a wonderful husband, and he got a wonderful brother-in-law. Brother enjoyed a successful career as an Allstate agent for many years. Clients would visit his office at North and Clark, where they not only received valuable insurance assistance, but also relished the entertaining stories he shared. Despite his unconventional approach to customer service, characterized by the simple act of handing out business cards with the 800 number for claims, everyone still appreciated the unique touch he brought to his profession. Brother knew a lot of people and had a lot of friends, and if he didn't know you, he knew all about you. When you think of my brother, you think about how much fun he was. There was something special about his personality that people were always drawn to and kept them wanting to be his friend, girlfriend, or his client. Though he wasn't the settled down type, Brother was a master of the great date. Many fun expressions were coined from Brother's dating history. Prime example was when Brother was on his second go-around with one of the girls and they ended up breaking up at dinner. Her response was, "Pass the ketchup." So now anytime we have a conversation and someone responds as if it's no big deal, we say, "Pass the ketchup." Brother, we will cherish the memories of your stories, the warmth of your companionship, and the lasting impact you had on each of us. Your spirit will live on in the stories we share and the love that endures in our hearts for you. Rest in peace, Brother. You will deeply be missed, but your legacy of love and connection will live on in the hearts of those who were fortunate enough to know you. Thank you. Good.
All right, I'm going to try to get through this. First of all, I want to thank my mom. She's been unbelievable throughout this whole thing. Total rock star. Really amazing, Mom. Great job. And I also want to thank my friends for reaching out to me and texting me, sometime to nauseam, but it's okay. I appreciate it. It means a lot. Okay. In my life, I've been very fortunate to have wonderful people surrounding me. I have the best mother, great father, a great stepfather who I adore, was lucky enough to be very, very close to both of my grandmothers, and friends like no other. And I simply cherish my friends very, very much. In completing this circle are my two uncles. Now, I have two uncles that have never been married. They didn't have any children, so I was like a son to both of them. The relationship between a nephew and an uncle is very, very special. You can learn a lot from your uncles if you take the time to listen and absorb. I'm lucky in that I have two uncles from opposite ends of the spectrum. Really opposite ends of the spectrum. So I get to see a lot of things. My Uncle Mel, who is so kind, so generous, super smart, heart of gold, has taught me how to have a heart of gold, taught me about character, and also corrected my grammar endless amount of times as he was an English teacher. He's also a super smart investor and has taught me a lot about where to put money, what stocks to buy, what stocks not to buy, and how to be a man of character. Now, on the other side of the spectrum was my uncle brother, a man I idolized. Someone who showed me what it's like to live life to the fullest, taught me what it's like to be a good son to his mother, and how important it is to have good friends surrounding you. As far back as I can remember, I've always heard, "You're just like your uncle, the bachelor around town, Mr. Chicago." And there's nothing wrong with those things, but there was so much more to him that I saw through his nephew's eyes. My uncle came from humble beginnings, no silver spoon in his mouth. His family didn't have a lot of money, and the siblings weren't all that close when they were younger. However, as they got older, everyone really enjoyed each other's company. My uncle's older sister, Renee, who, by the way, coined the term brother, so we have to give her credit for that, was someone I truly believe that he looked up to, even though he was deathly afraid of her. I think he was afraid, though, of her because she was one to speak her mind, and he really respected that. His father was a wonderful man, my Grandpa Sam, the gentlest of the bunch, and my uncle respected how hard he worked and what he needed to do to provide for his family. And his mother, the great Grandma Betty, who never saw a mare she didn't like. She loved my uncle and loved how much he took care of his mother, always taking her to the bagel, taking her shopping, taking her to see her grandchildren, and even taking her on some of his dates. And I truly believe whoever he was dating at the time liked my grandma more at the end of the date than she liked my uncle. And then there was Merle Jane, the beautiful Merle Jane, the perfect Merle Jane, my mother. Growing up, they weren't all that close because of their age difference, but as they got older, they were super close, and he loved his baby sister a lot. I mean, how could you not? My mom always loved being with her brother and was super proud on how successful he became with his business. As I stated before, he came from very humble beginnings, yet he did it the right way, through hard work, networking, and from the ground up. You were always in good hands with Mike Silverman, as he was with Allstate. My uncle also respected how sharp and successful his brother-in-law Stan was, but it was Stan's love of his sister that made him the most happy. And my uncle had a cast of characters of friends that were like no other, and I had the pleasure of meeting a lot of them. There was the wild neighbor, Alan Stengel, who was here, his Kramer, so to speak, Mark Collins, the unforgettable Tommy Bernstein, Warren Singer, the legendary Lenny Halprin, and then the guys that he would go to dinner with, like Lenny, Mark Perlow, Doug Simons, And then one of the greats, Ray from LA. There was also the two beautiful Dianes, who were so wonderful the last couple months, and I can't thank you both enough. He loved all his friends very much. He loved his friends very much, and you can always tell how much fun he was having with the amount of food that landed on his shirt instead of in his mouth. My uncle was very proud of his three nephews also. He couldn't stop raving about how smart and successful his nephew Howard was as a trader, always bragging that if he didn't give Howard that $6,000 loan, he might not be the wealthiest in the family today. Still debatable if my cousins paid him back, but it's okay. Just kidding. There was also a time that Howard and my uncle went fishing together in Upper Canada for a weekend, and they shared a cabin, and my uncle's snoring was so bad that Howard risked being eaten by a bear and just slept outside. Now think about this. There are thousands of lawyers all over the country that go to law school, they graduate, and they get a job as a lawyer and make a very nice living. But only a handful of lawyers become behemoths. My uncle was very proud of Stevie and always loved seeing him on TV smile, and my uncle would smile and say, "That's my nephew." A lot of my friends also enjoyed hanging out with my uncle. So many have reached out to me, as I said before, saying what a character he was and how much fun he was, telling me funny stories about him and what a great guy my uncle was, and they loved hanging out with him because he was a legend. Stories like when he was in LA with the girl he was dating at the time, and they were shopping on Rodeo Drive. And he mentioned to his girlfriend, "Where is everybody? This place is dead. We were just in Gucci, we're just in Prada. There's nobody here. What is going on?" All of a sudden, he saw four guys walking towards him, slow motion, and he said, "I know those guys." When all of a sudden, a scream from a megaphone was said, "Cut! Cut!" My uncle literally walked onto the set of Entourage, and they threw him off the set not knowing, just because he would just look around like he would always do. Then there was also the time that he went fishing in Alaska. Picture the scene, beautiful blue sky, crystal clear water coming down from glaciers, Silver Lake, captain of the boat, everyone's having a wonderful, wonderful time. And my uncle was just so happy, so he decided to grab a mug, dip it in that clear lake, drink it, and just, And then all of a sudden, the captain of the ship said, "Did you just drink from that? It's awful water." And my uncle literally destroyed his pants. They had to cut the trip short and turn around. And that was my uncle. I loved my uncle very, very much, and I'm really sad. But I will never forget the wonderful times we shared together, times at East Bank Club, high tea at the Four Seasons, having dinner with him at Joe's, or just grabbing a cup of coffee. There was nobody like Uncle Brother. He was the greatest. Now, most of you know how important I love music and how important music is to me. I love playing it. I love how it makes me feel. I love cool riffs. I love great lyrics. A song, when you hear a song, it can take you back to a specific place and time and make you smile, make you cry, or make you remember a time where you were at your life when you heard that song. Now, one of my favorite songwriters of all time is, who just passed away also, Jimmy Buffett, and he has a song called The Pascagoula Run. It's a song about Jimmy and his uncle and the crazy adventures they go on. And every time I hear that song, I think of my Uncle Brother. Almost done. Now, the bridge of that song, after a couple choruses, goes like this. What do the ladies say? What do the ladies say? Bring that young man over here. We want to buy that boy a bear. That ain't all we want to do. Bring your crazy uncle too. It's been an honor being your nephew. And wherever you are, Uncle Brother, don't ever stop being crazy, as it wouldn't suit you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy, and thank you, Merle, for sharing those really beautiful reflections. And we know that it's just the tip of the iceberg. We could be here for hours and hours and invite each one of these folks gathered here to share their own stories, and we still would never be able to fully encapsulate such a special person. I want to invite you to turn into your brochure here, and let's read together in English the 23rd Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. We sometimes wonder why this psalm, the 23rd Psalm, has been designated as one of the psalms that we turn to in times of grief or loss. And I think one of the reasons is that it describes a life that has peaks and valleys, a life where there are moments of challenge, moments of disappointment, moments of fear even. We read about the valley of the shadow of death, but ultimately a life in which one's cup runs over. And we imagine that that cup is running over. Maybe in Brother's case, it would be running over with Dewars on the rocks with a twist. But we also think it would be running over with blessings. And that's truly, truly how someone else is having a good time. That's truly how we think of Brother living his life, as though that cup was just overflowing with blessings. As we heard, he was the second of 3 children born in Albany Park, Chicago, a few years after Renee and a few years before Merle. We heard about what a good brother he was and what a good son he was. And we heard that he, over the course of his young adulthood, amassed some traditional accomplishments, like a business degree from Roosevelt and a long career as an Allstate agent. We didn't hear yet about his ownership of the bingo parlor. That's a story for another time. When we were meeting a couple days ago, Brother's brother-in-law, Stan, described him as a Damon Runyon character, like as in Guys and Dolls fame. And as I was hearing Sandy list off the names of some of those famous friends, they started to sound like Hot Horse Herbie or Nicely Johnson or Joe the Joker, some of those classic larger-than-life characters. Unlike the figures in a Damon Runyon novel, Brother wasn't a gambler or a con man, but he did embrace some surprising combinations of qualities. He was larger than life, but he was also very particular about some things. He was big-hearted, and he could sometimes be short-fused. He was the most loyal friend. He never got offended, but he had been known to end a relationship over something as minor as a freckle that he didn't care for. He could be found pretty much any day of the week, holding court in one of his favorite Gold Coast establishments, always with his back to the wall so that he could get the best view of everybody coming in the door. He was truly someone who worked to live, not the other way around. And to go out to dinner with Brother or go out to coffee, as we heard, meant that you would be greeted by just about everyone. He knew everyone, and he had an uncanny memory for people's names, faces, and stories. He was truly an encyclopedia of people. There used to be this app, I don't think it exists anymore, called Foursquare, where if you check into a place enough times, you would be designated the mayor of that place. I don't think Brother would have used the app. It sounds like he had enough trouble with Facebook Live, not just projecting a close-up of his eyeball. But he didn't need the app because he was already the mayor of every place that he frequented. To go out to dinner with Brother also meant, as we heard, you were coming home with some food on your shirt. If life was a banquet, Brother dived in without a napkin. He may not have been much of a traveler. He preferred hanging out near home to lavish trips abroad, but it's important to mention that he was invested in his community. He supported the Jewish Federation, and he came to high holiday services at Temple Shalom, and he was very welcoming of the newer members of his family, including his brothers-in-law. Brother's life was full of long-standing friendships and deep enjoyment of those that he cared about the most. He embraced a life of bachelorhood, and it's safe to say he did express regret at times that he had not found someone to help care for him as he aged. When someone passes away, it can leave a hole in our hearts. It can leave a hole, it almost feels like, in the fabric of the universe, somebody that we've counted on, that we've relied on, that we've known we could pick up the phone and call or meet for a coffee or a meal, is no longer here. And it's okay to notice that hole, to feel that lack in our life that will never go away. But we know, as Sandy mentioned, that brother will be remembered. He'll be remembered anytime you gather around the table for some great stories and decent food. He'll be remembered every time you bump into a long-lost friend and it feels like it was just yesterday that you were together. He'll be remembered whenever you hear or utter one of his signature brother-isms, like pass the ketchup. And most of all, he will be remembered whenever you celebrate all that life has to offer. Yehi Zichron Baruch, may brother's memory forever be for a blessing. I'm going to invite you to rise in body or spirit as we recite the memorial prayer, after which we will conclude this portion of our service today. El Malei Rachamim Shochein Bamromim Hametzei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei Shechina B'ma'alot Kedoshim Utoharim Kezohar Harakia Mazirim Et Nishmat Myron, brother Silverman Shehalach Lolamo Began Eden Tei Menuchato Ana Bal Harachamim Hastirehu Beseter Kanafecha Lolamim Utzror Bitzror HaChaim Et Nishmato Adonai Hu Nachalato Ve'yanuach B'Shalom Al Mishkavo V'nomar Amen. El Malei Rachamim, exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure to the soul of Myron, who has gone to his eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May his soul be bound up in the bond of life. May he rest in peace, and let us say, Amen.
Please be seated for a few brief announcements. There will be a private family-only interment at Westlawn Cemetery this afternoon. However, the Shiva will be this evening from 5 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. at the East Bank Club at 500 North Kingsbury Street in Chicago. Again, that's 5 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. tonight. The family has requested memorial contributions to the Jewish United Fund, 30 South Wells Street in Chicago. For those of you online, all this information is listed on our website. And for those of you present, if you didn't get a folder, they are available as you leave today. The following pallbearers, please step forward when I call your name. Sandy Diamond, Scott Peterman, Howard Malman, Jake Stoddard, Tom Stoddard, and Susan Peterman. And I'll ask everyone to please rise at this time as the casket is escorted from the chapel.